morning to you all, our lovely viewers, and welcome to yet another thrilling edition of ACFIM Talks. This is a weekly talk show brought to you by Alliance for Finance Monitoring, ACFIM. My name is Elizabeth Karunji, and I'll be your host for today. So before we get started, if you haven't subscribed yet to ACFIM's YouTube channel, kindly click the subscribe button below, and you can also share the link with your friends to tune into the show. Also follow us on all our social media platforms, that is on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. The details are all on your screen below. So today on ACFIM Talks, we're going to be taking a recap on the recent by-elections and the implications on Uganda's democratic dispensation. But before we begin, I want to give you a brief context. The Uganda Electoral Commission has so far conducted 5 by-elections for members of parliament in the constituencies of Omoro County, Soroti East, Bogonyo, Bukimbiri County, and Busongora South, and for one of the district chairpersons, that is in Kayunga. Some of these elections were annulled by court due to the electoral integrity deficits that did not meet the accepted standards of being free, fair, and transparent. Elections are a cornerstone of democracy, and they empower people to participate in the voting of their political representatives. Protecting and promoting the integrity of elections is therefore a top policy priority. In all these by-elections that we have seen so far, there were some electoral integrity deficits that were observed. For instance, we have seen videos circulating on social media and pictures which are being shared on mainstream news of plainclothes men arresting polling agents, political leaders of mainly opposition parties as well. We have also seen excessive use of money, abuse of state resources, damage of election materials, and allegations of ballot stuffing, among others. And this episode of ACFIM Talks particularly looks into the by-elections that have been conducted so far and what implication they have on Uganda's democratic dispensation. To have this conversation with me, I have Eseru Abel. Abel is a political scientist, and I'm so excited to have you on the show, Abel.
Thank you, Lisa, and good morning to all our viewers outside there.
Right. We also have Eddie Kainda. Mr. Kainda is an economist and a political analyst. I'm not sure he's logged in yet, but Eddie, would you love to say hello to the viewers if he's in? He's probably not in yet, but will be joining us shortly. So Abel, let's kickstart this conversation. And I want you to tell our viewers, from your point of view as a pro-democracy actor, how would you sum up the recently conducted by-elections?
Thank you, Lisa, for that question. First of all, I would like to inform our viewers that elections can further democracy, development, human rights, and security, or undermine them. For this reason, promoting and protecting the integrity of elections is a very critical and important issue. Only when elections are credible can they legitimize a government in power, or even the leader can be looked at someone who was elected in a credible manner, as well as effectively safeguard the rights of the citizens to express their political rights. Back to your question on how I should sum up these by-elections. First of all, you brought them very well, or when you're giving us the preamble. There were still some electoral integrity deficit that we observed. Personally, I've been moving around the country observing some of these by-elections. Of course, we know that some of the by-elections were annulled due to electoral integrity deficits because some of the candidates and also political parties and also our EMB did not conduct themselves very well. So they made sure that elections did not go in a free and credible manner as expected, as democracy supposes. But when we go back to these by-elections, we have still seen some of the deficits which have continued to undermine Uganda's democracy for so long. For example, we are talking about the issue of abuse of state resources. When you look at state resources, you talk about financial, personnel, and vehicles, among others. And in all these by-elections, they can tell you that there are very many top government officials who have been moving around. And if you ask yourself what have they been using and who has been guarding them in terms of personnel, you'll find that the security personnel are paid by taxpayers' money. The vehicles they are using are government vehicles, and some of them conceal the vehicles by removing the number plates. We have seen all those pictures around, but also they have come up with a new form of smearing the number plates with some oily thing and putting some mud, so you cannot be able to recognize which vehicle is this, which state institution does it belong to. So, but there's also an issue of excessive use of money. Money has become a permanent fixture in our elections in Uganda, and it's high time we need to start having a conversation on how can we regulate how much money should be spent and how much money should be injected in elections, and on what items should the money be spent. So I think it's high time we start coming up with a campaign finance regulation that can aid in regulating the money that's in elections. But there's also the issue of security. We have seen in these by-elections, there has been over deployment of security in some areas, particularly I can speak about Songora South, and then also we talk about Soroti East. So you find that the involvement of security in the elections has caused a lot of voter apathy, and some of the voters even failed to turn out. So, but I can generally say the campaign period of most of these elections was peacefully done, except that most of the electoral integrity deficits would surface on the eve to the polling day. That's why we would see cases of arrests of polling agents, arrests of political leaders, and also arrests of some of the voters and some other things. And in one of the stakeholders meeting we had with the Electoral Commission that was in Buchimbiri, the chairperson himself, the chairperson of the commission, Electoral Commission, that's Uganda Electoral Commission, came out and said, of course, security is part and a key actor in the electoral process, but there are some complaints they are receiving as a commission from the voters and also the political players, the candidates and political parties, that security is now arresting people without even asking them or doing further investigation to find out whether these people are engaged in acts that do interfere with electoral processes, or even they have been caught on the act of maybe giving out money and what. Because on one occasion, one of the police officers who came out to defend the forces said, for example, when they arrested someone in Sorot, they said they were told that someone had been in a room and was sleeping with about 2 million exchange money which was a bundle in bundles of 2,000, and it was suspected that that money would be used for voter bribery. So I asked myself, okay, if I am maybe one of the party leaders, or I belong to a political party, and maybe I'm supposed to pay my polling agents on polling, they maybe give them money for food or buy food items and water and also pay them. What audacity does the police or any other security agency have to come to my room and arrest me on allegation that I have money in my room, 2 million in my room, and they have gotten information that I'm going to use that money to bribe voters? So I think also the security forces need to, who engage on polling, they need to see how they can work together with the Electoral Commission and other political players to ensure that they don't interfere with how the elections are organized, but they should play a role of making sure that everything moves on smoothly so that we can be able to have a free and fair election. That's how I can sum up, but I can say that most of the elections went on well, regardless of some of those deficits that we saw. At least if you compare what happened now and what happened in 2021, you would see that, of course, there was less violence, although there were some arrests. So far, we have not registered any killing as registered in the November 18th, 2020. So I can commend the EC and also other actors who have been playing a great role in this by-election. But regardless of that, we are still having some deficits that we need to work out. So I think stakeholders that are engaged in elections need to discuss and come up with a good common position on how we can solve and grow our democracy, which is still nascent.
Yes, Abel. Thank you. Thank you so much for that submission. I see Eddie trying to log in. Eddie, can you hear me? As Eddie is logging in, Abel, you made a brief comparison to these by-elections and the 2021 elections. If you compare both scenarios as an observer that has seen both the elections, do you think the scenarios are similar, or are there certain elements that we were not able to see as a country in the 2021 elections because social media was off? For instance, you talked about the cars that the number plates that are smeared and these guys that you can't really see them, and we've seen videos of ballot stuffing, which we're not able to see in last year's elections because social media was off for more than a week. So do you think that kind of blurred us? What do you think?
You see, these by-elections were very unique in the case that social media was first of all on. So whatever would happen, people would be able to take pictures, and that's why you were able to see most of those vehicles were moving on polling day. So anything that would happen, people would take videos and share. And they would also take pictures on whether policemen are trying to break into the houses of the political leaders. For instance, we saw a video clip from Soroti East where the allegations that the security officers were breaking into the home of the Soroti district woman, that is Honorable Anna Deke, and that was also shared on social media. So there are certain things that happen in this election that did not really happen in the 2021 by-election, because clips were able to be taken and people saw them or as they happened. On the issues of we saw also candidates. Of course, there are some candidates that were overzealous enough. They had after hearing the allegations of ballot stuffing, they went ahead and kicked and destroyed polling materials. That was so unfortunate. They just needed to have an engagement with the electoral officers or polling officials in those polling stations and see how they can be able to sort that out. But also, when you compare the previous election in terms of observation and what, very few civil society organizations were accredited to observe elections. And also, you find that I can talk about, as you also know, there were killings in the 2021 general elections. We saw the 18th and 19th November 2020 during the campaigns in Kampala. Over 54 Ugandans were shot at by stray bullets. So I've not seen that so far in any of these by-elections. Security is trying to also make sure that they manage the electoral process very well. But also, I think the candidates are not so violent, and also the voters are not acting in a so more violent manner as they used to act during the 2021 general campaigns, because they would provoke the security members, and out of those provocations, we find exchanges. So sometimes security members get angered, and through maybe trying to defend themselves, shoot out, you see tear gas, and also tear gas has been so rare in these by-elections as compared to what we saw in the 2021 general election. So I think we are trying to improve on certain aspects, which I believe we need to continue like that, regardless of some of the deficits that we have seen so far.
Thank you, Abel, for that. And that leads me to my next question. Oh, Eddie, we seem to have you on. Good to see you.
Yes, Lisa, good morning.
Yes, good morning. And I'm going to bombard you right away. And I would love to hear from you just a summation of the recently conducted by-elections from your point of view as someone who has been observing these elections.
Thank you, Lisa, for this invitation. I've been keen on observing the elections we have had. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Eddie, loud and clear. Eddie seems to be struggling with his connection, but Abel will join in from there. So Abel, you observed these by-elections, and there were allegations that money was dished out to most households, and police didn't even arrest the police even arrested opposition members in Soroti City due to this allegation of vote bribery. What do you think needs to be done to solve this problem? this illegitimate use of money in elections?
As I earlier mentioned, money has become a permanent fixture in our elections, and one of the things they use to control voter consent nowadays is money. They induce them with money, and also sometimes candidates use money to buy certain small food groceries and give to these voters. And I cannot rule out the fact that these allegations are true. In fact, there are some of the voters we talked to in some of these constituencies we went to, and they were telling us, of course, candidates, both opposition and also the ruling government, would give them money. They would go sometimes they have meetings, and they coin it in terms of they are giving you either money for water or something like a transport back home. So, but if you look at the amount of money being given to someone, you ask yourself, why should you give someone about 50,000 or 30,000 a transport refund? Yet someone comes from within that very constituency and it's not very far. So you really look at that. They are trying to induce them and bribe them and make sure that they vote for those candidates who have spent money on them. So the issue of voter bribery, vote buying, and commercialization of politics is a very big problem which needs to be tackled both from the government side, civil society, and also other stakeholders. First of all, I would like to suggest that there need to be robust civic engagement with most of the electorates and also the political parties and also political candidates. We need to tell the candidates to appreciate that politics or elections is not about money, but it's all about you sharing the ideas you have with the electorates and let the electorates appreciate the ideas you have. Of course, there have been challenges on ground whereby politicians are saying that voters demand a lot from them. And each time, even they go and campaign and tell them that this is what I promised to do for you in terms of maybe laying down their manifestos and their ideas before they leave the campaign ground or the area where they're having a meeting from, they will ask, how have you left us? How are you leaving us? Are you just leaving us like that? So there is a supply side. So we need to make sure, how do we cut off that from the supply side, but also from a demand side? The suppliers are politicians. The demanders are the voters. So how do we make try to come up with a balancing and ensure that we stop both the supply and demand? We can only ensure that by ensuring that we improve the service delivery, because most of these people who ask for that money are very impoverished. So they look at election seasons as an opportunity where they can recoup and make money from. So we need to make sure that our leaders and all those in government and politicians make sure that they extend the services these voters need, and also make sure that they come up with programs that can help in transforming the communities economically so that people can be able to rely on the income they have instead of waiting for politicians and they start demanding for money. But also government needs to come up with a comprehensive campaign finance law, which can help in regulating how much money can be spent on elections, where does this money come from, and on what items can this money be spent on, and which body should be in charge of ensuring that there are regulations, the enforcement is done very well, and also political leaders comply, and if they don't comply, what sanctions can be done. So all these are some of the things that can be used to ensure that we address the issue of excessive spending and voter bribery in elections.
All right, thank you, Abel. And initially, in the beginning, it hinted on security, the role we have seen security agencies play in this election. And we know that their role is very vital in any election, but there have been numerous accusations of security being partisan, and over deployment of security tends to cause voter apathy, resulting into low voter turnout on polling day. What's the say on this, and what can be done about this?
Thank you, Lisa. Of course, as you have mentioned, security is a very key stakeholder in elections because they need to be there to ensure that the lives and properties of people are safeguarded, they make sure that violence does not occur and people start to maybe batter and kill themselves. So we need security to be around elections, but their degree of involvement should also not extend to ensure that they start acting in a partisan way, whereby they are seen maybe because there are accusations now that some security officials have been engaged in ballot stuffing, not issue of security officials arresting only opposition candidates and leaders. So we need to find a way of addressing the issue of security in our elections. But also, there's an issue of over-deployment. This, for the fact, we are over-deploying security in most of these elections. And when I talk of security, we can also talk of the heads of district security. We can talk about the resident district commissioners. All over the districts we have gone to monitor this by-election, they will tell you not less than 10 RDCs are camped in a constituency, which has about, for example, when you talk about Busongora South, it has 11 sub-counties. So you have over 10 RDCs camped there, and they are being driven. They have guards, security guards. So what are they all doing in a small constituency? Whatever something else happens in their district when they are not there. So over deployment and of security members has also resulted to voter apathy, because some people are not used to seeing a lot of security around there. For example, this rural constituency, when you over deploy and there are very many people, they will start fearing and they will say, I think tomorrow I'm not going to vote, I rather remain in my house. For example, if I give you the voter turnout in most of these by-elections, you realize that some people did not vote because of fear of the security. For example, in Busongora itself, we had about 52,000 registered voters, but only about 27,000 turned out. That's about 52% of the registered voters. So where did the 48% go? If you were to ask yourself, maybe it's because of the over deployment that we saw that these people did not turn out. Even Soroti, we had about 36,000 registered voters, but only about 18,000 turned out. That's an estimate of, it's about 51% voted. Where the rest? It's only in Buchimbiri where electoral commission scored high in terms of voter turnout. Out of the 32,000 registered voters, we had about 23,227, which is about 72%. So if we compare the deployment that was in Buchimbiri and Soroti City East and Busongora South, you realize that there was over deployment in Soroti City East and then Busongora South. Why? You know, these are some of the strongholds of opposition. Opposition has been dominating Soroti City East for so long, and also that area of Kasese, inclusive of Busongora. So you find that sometimes the government thinks that where opposition is so dominant, there's need of beefing up security to ensure that nothing like violence and ruckus happens. But this has another effect, because when people see a lot of security in place, voters don't turn out to vote. And their figures, an electoral commission can also verify and ask themselves, we did not have heavy deployment in Buchimbiri South, and we had over 72% of the voters turning out to vote. We had heavy deployment in Busongora South and Soroti City East. We had less than 53% of voter turnout. So do we need heavy deployment in our elections? I don't think we need all the RDCs we always deploy. And also we saw some of the army officials involved, army officials in some of these by-elections. We ask ourselves, when did the army start coming to be part of the election?
Just a quick one. You're talking about the RDCs from within the region all camping in one constituency. Are they doing security work, or are they doing NRM work? Because we have seen them canvassing for votes in some of the districts.
Of course, in some of the districts, and we have even seen some tweet. For example, I can tell you when I was in Omoro, they shared, I saw, and I also verified some tweets from the RDC of Omoro district, who was posting some of the things on his platform, on his social media pages, and I was asking myself, when did the government officials stand this partisan? Of course, there are some. I cannot confirm that all of them maybe go for elections to campaign for NRM, but what we are told that is that there are some of, because they are within that area or sub-region or that region, they go and help in terms of strategizing on how to ensure that the election moves in a free and transparent manner without violence. But of course, there's instances where we have seen some of them turn and start campaigning for other candidates. So it's so unfortunate sometimes that when we see them turn to campaign for other candidates, that means they forget what has taken them there. But for me, my point still remains that we don't need to over-deploy, and we don't need a lot of RDCs going to those districts to camp there in the name of security. Yet sometimes when voters see them, because each RDC has guards, has a driver. So if you have 10 RDCs moving around a small constituency, which has maybe 10 sub-counties, and you also have police, and on top of that, you have government officials that have come. You have the vice president, you have the prime minister, you have cabinet ministers, you have state ministers. All this come with personnel and security. So when they are all moving within a small constituency, what message do they pass across to the voters? Of course, voters will start getting scared. They will say, who are all these people and what are they all doing here? If I go maybe and they see me, won't I be arrested? So some of those things cause a lot of voter apathy. That's why I say we need to address how we deploy our security and what role. It should be very clear and stipulated clearly who should be involved in an election or a by-election. Should we have a lot of deployment? I don't think we need to have a lot of deployment. That's what I can say.
Thank you so much. We're about to go for a short break, but before we do that, we saw allegations of voters being ferried from different districts. I think historically we had that some voters had been ferried in from Kumi, Yam. I think there were also voters ferried in from a neighboring district. As someone who observed these elections, is this true? Is this allegation true?
Of course, the issue of voter tourism is common in our elections in Uganda here, and for a fact that some candidates do ferry people to come and make numbers in their campaigns, but also some people do ferry voters. For example, if they realize that maybe I'm registered from Soroti City East and you have a bigger team in Kampala here who are supposed to vote, they can decide to organize and ferry us and we go and vote. But also, there are some people who ferry others. Of course, I've had those allegations, who ferry others to go and vote for those who are not going to vote. So I ask myself, how do they even vote if they are not registered from that area? So some of the people who the leaders and what were telling us, you see, for us in opposition, I don't know how true these allegations are. We need to discuss with the Electoral Commission and confirm whether this really happens, and also so that we can see how we can solve it. Because they were telling us, you see, when they want to give someone else to vote, they bring someone and tell you you're going to vote on behalf of this person, and when the polling agent of maybe some other candidate realize that this person is not on the register, I hear they arrest that person and take that person away. So I don't know how true this is. I don't know whether the arrest of polling agents is one of the way of making sure that those ones whom you are claiming ferried are brought, and so that they vote on behalf of those other ones whom they know are not going to be to vote, or they are not within the country, or they are not within the constituency. Is true, but we need to dig more and find out how true this is, and also find a way of making sure we stop such things if they truly happen.
Thank you, Abel. So we're going to go in for a short break and we'll be back briefly.